My name's Katherine Reed. I'm from northern Tasmania.
I live 22 k's from Launceston with my husband Tim and our 2 boys, Will and Harry.
Yeah, that's it.
We farm miniature goats and Angus cattle.
How is everyone this morning? I've always liked goats. We had goats when I was younger. Bend your foot, thank you. So over winter, everything gets really soft and we have a lot of water in the paddocks and stuff, so their feet tend to get very wet very quickly. So I'm just trying to do a little bit and often at the moment to get them back into the right sort of shape. Will's my main helper with my goat handling stuff. He comes out to the babies several times a day. He comes and checks them first thing in the morning for me and makes sure everyone's warm and healthy. Then usually asks me just after I put him to bed if he can go and tuck the babies in.
At the age of 19, I came off a horse, leaving me a paraplegic. I remember everything from when I had my accident. It was in some ways an ordinary day. And so I went off on this horse. He was one I'd had trouble with before. And I was saving my favourite horses for later in the day. I went, I'll get this rotten thing out of the way and then I'll come back and I'll do the fun ones. And this rotten one, I got to the end of the track and went to pull him up from a fast gallop and I couldn't stop. From almost flat out, I hit the ground. I had no horse underneath me. I literally got left behind.
The bottom just fell out of my world. I remember someone said to me, "Mrs. Reed, are you okay? Are you okay? You can't let us see you cry." And I thought, I'll cry if I want to cry. And I wiped away my tears and I walked in and I didn't cry. And there you were, just lying there, quite serene. In fact, probably more serene than I'd ever seen you. You were covered in wires and paraphernalia and you said to me, very, very calmly, you said, "Hi, Mum. You should see my my helmet."
So this is the helmet from my accident. I remember it looking a bit more dramatic than that.
Yeah, I thought it had spiderweb bits all down the side.
So still, it was a fair whack. What was it like for you at a time when all the focus was on me?
Well, in the hospital, it was fine because that's what was expected. Everyone was focusing on you. It was more the months after that the first question's, "How's your sister?" And you get that for the first couple of months and then when 3 years later, that's the first question still and people forget to ask how you are and what's happening with you and get a little bit sick of it then, but eventually you want it to stop and it'd be nice for people to ask about you every now and then.
Prior to my accident, I had been working on a thoroughbred property that was both a thoroughbred stud and a racing stable. I'd kind of got quite interested in the breeding side of things. People don't know what to do with people in wheelchairs, especially when there's horses involved, and everyone's sort of a bit scared to let me do anything or try anything. And so that was where the idea of running my own stud came from. Timmy, can I grab you for a sec, please?
Yep, that's all right.
Can you pop her collar back on?
If you can grab her.
So while I kept trying to get work in the racing industry or breeding industry in Tassie, there just wasn't that kind of opportunity for me. Yeah. I've always found genetics really interesting, even in high school before I was working with animals. So to do the genetic side of what is a goat stud kind of ticked that box for me and allowed me to follow that interest.
Oh, Will, just gentle.
I have to be very patient and strategic at this stage with catching them, so they're slowly getting better. I try and make sure that I get hold of them each day. Yeah, get hands on each one of them every day so they can have a bit of a cuddle and a bit of a scratch so they get used to it. She's over here, Frida. So we've had a lot of trouble in the last year or so in this paddock with barley grass and with stalkspill. So the goats will eat a bit of it when it's quite young like this, but they like to have a bit of everything. So it's got to the stage where this paddock was just a massive problem. So what we've done is Tim's actually put a mixed fodder crop down behind us here.
So when we came in almost 10 years ago when we bought it, was pretty much set stocked property with about 6 permanent watering points. So often it was 3 or 4 paddocks opened at once. So we've changed over to the regen practices very much. We haven't used any synthetic fertiliser here for almost 5 years now, 6 years. And we're doing diverse fodder crops, cover crops.
Tim's actually come along and mown or whippersnipped strips into this paddock for me so that I can kind of get around a little bit better. If I'm looking at something like this, I'm going on the quad bike. So, yeah, I'm not trying to negotiate that sort of thing in my chair. Basically, anything outside of the yard and the goat paddocks and the driveway, I'm hopping on the quad bike to get around the farm.
Like last year, we had trouble November.
Having a wife in a wheelchair or anyone with a disability, there's different things you have to set up around the farm so that they've got accessibility and can be included in what they do. Like our biggest thing on this property to start with was making gates swing. There was, I think, 3 gates on the entire property that swung.
And then my gate here, Tim's actually got me an airlock because they're smart enough that they'll often try and follow me out. So I've got my 2 gates here that I shut that one behind me before I open my other one up. So. Come on.
You come, Harry?
If I'm pushing my chair across flat ground, there's very little resistance. It's quite easy. But as soon as there is carpet or grass or gravel or any kind of uneven surface involved, it's both physically and mentally really draining because I have to be constantly concentrating on where my wheels are going.
That dog. It's full of weeds.
Everyone can see that much.
The thing about being in a chair is just how much energy it takes. I'm using 1/3 of my body to do what most people have a whole body to do these jobs. Plus, I have to lift full dead weight. When I do something like get onto the motorbike, I have to then drag the dead weight of 2/3 of my body up. It's amazing how heavy your legs are when you have absolutely no control over them.
So I don't have a roll bar on here because that would have made that exceptionally difficult. But we are going to grab my helmet now.
One of the things I've found quite difficult about being back on property is that there's all this conflicting emotional baggage that kind of comes with it. There's the fact that I can't do all these things I used to be able to do and the grief that comes with that. There's the fact that intellectually I know how to move a fence, I know how to move livestock, I know how to check on animals, and I know how to go and dig up thistles and all these jobs.
Division of labour on the farm, pretty much I'd say 90, I'm trying to be polite, 99% would be me. Looking after the goats and things, Katherine does most of that. I have to help out, obviously, with things like holding goats or moving their shelters, bits and pieces like that. But most of the other stuff Katherine will do. Being on the farm's great with the peace and quiet and you think you're really active. But compared to how fit and active I used to be, strength-wise, you're very fit. Cardio, and sometimes mentally, you're not actually that fit. You're doing a lot by yourself, and you're often sitting for half a day in a tractor, or just getting out or just walking back and forth up a fence. You're not actually doing a lot of heavy physical work. And then the fact of having a disabled partner, wife. I used to lift Katherine in and out of the tractor and my ute because it's too high for her to get into it by herself. And in an OH&S point of view, when you're lifting something even by yourself that's over 60 kilos, it's completely against all the rules. And so, yeah, I have to look after myself in that sense.
Right, shut it behind me.
I've had a shoulder redone from tearing, having a slap tear in that, which at one point I'm driving home from jobs with only one hand to change gears and steer with because I couldn't lift my right arm. And then the funniest part of that was when I came out of hospital after it, I'm in the passenger seat and Katherine's driving and she's like, I'm not used to being the able-bodied person in this relationship.
La 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 la. This is the third car I've had since I had my accident. I used to have push-pull hand controls. These ones are actually a bit different in that I've got an electric accelerator, which makes it sort of driven by my finger rather than my whole hand. And took a little bit of getting used to, but it's quite nice. Down low. I get many comments from people, very well-meaning and well-intentioned, about how good a job I'm doing when they see me out and about. So I might be at the supermarket getting my groceries and someone will come up and tell me that I'm doing a great job or whatever. For me, I've been in a chair 15 years. That's a very basic job for me to do, and I think it comes down to this sense of internalised ableism, I suppose, is probably the term you'd use, that we just don't realise the way that we approach disability, and to have a disability is often considered this horrible thing. And I mean, it's not something you'd choose, but it's also not always necessarily as big a disaster as we think it is.